All right, welcome back. Peace be with everyone. And today I'm gonna be doing a breakdown on the show Black Mirror. Just one episode, or and then a couple parts of another episode of it. For those who aren't familiar with the Black Mirror, it's basically like Twilight Zone. So basically every episode is a different cast and it's a different like thing going on, a different plot. So there was just this. It had came out a couple weeks ago on Netflix, and of course it was number one on Netflix. And I was watching it to identify some blasphemy, and sure enough, there was one episode that was just I was really surprised on what I was seeing. I don't know if I'd say surprised, but it was just a lot going on in it, and it was so obvious too, the blasphemy of it. So yeah, it came out on April 10th, this new season, and yeah, so it's called Black Mirror, and the reason that they do that whole Black Mirror and everything, it just goes into the verse about how First Corinthians 13:12, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. So that part, for now we see through a glass darkly. That part right there. Um, so that's why at the beginning of each episode, they show Black Mirror with the dark and then they crack it. Like this was the one for this new season, just like this. They just crack the glass because that's what they want to do. They like to crack that glass. Remember? Remember 50 Cent's album? He cracked the glass. You see what I'm saying? They do that a lot because it's just, blaspheming for seeing through the glass. So they crack that glass and then they got the cross right there too. And then that's why, we had the Rolling Stones. They had this album, I think this might be from the early 80s, late 70s, called Through the Past, Darkly. And then they're up against the glass like this. You see how they're like their noses and everything. So they're up against glass, and this is the Rolling Stones. And they obviously knew what they were doing too because they literally put through the past darkly, just like how the verse says through a glass darkly, comma darkly. So they already knew. And then that Rolling Stones, that just goes into the Stones, how it's written that followers of Christ, we are lively stones, and that Christ is the headstone and the chief cornerstone, and he is the stone that was rejected, and how we are lively stones, and how they want to roll those stones, they want to destroy the altar, they want to knock down Christ, that sort of thing. So that's why they were through the past darkly, right? And then that's why we had Lewis Carroll, but through the looking glass. So it's that same thing, dealing with the black mirror, seeing through the glass, cracking the glass, that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, and then as I had talked about before, the name KARAST is it's the Greek way of saying Christ is the way we say Christ. That's the Greek way, right? So KARAST was the original way of saying this. And then that's why we drive our cars. That's why the everybody starts to all the people that blaspheme in the movies and the music, they crash the cars, right? Because as the Lord said in Isaiah 52:5 and 6, and my name continually every day is blasphemed. Therefore my people shall know my name. Therefore they shall know in that day that I am he that doeth speak. Behold, it is I. So that's why the Lord told us, his name's going to be blasphemed all the time. And that's what we're going to be getting into here. So yeah, the karas, the kara, because ka means soul, ra means light. Kara el. That's how we get like Israel. See what I'm saying? So like right here. The embalmment of the dead body is termed karas, and the embalmed mummy, reborn by the preservative process and placed in the tomb to await the rebirth and spirit life, is named the karast, or Christ, right? And then we have, the African origin of Christianity. His last name, Christ, comes from the Coptic late Egyptian term karast, which means anointed one. So yeah, so karast and Christ, they mean the same thing, but karast was the original way of saying it. You know what I mean? See, the word Christ comes from the ancient word karast or charist, dealing with the christening, when they would do with the anointed mummy. And that's why they like to use the cars and things. So that's going to be the main thing that I'm getting into in this video is the Kara, because this episode that I'm talking about, it involves this man and he's searching for Carol's face. So he's going through his memories and he's trying to remember this girl named Carol, right? And dealing with the name again, just one second. That's why we have like because like I said, Ka means soul. Ka means soul, like, and then Ra means light, and then we already know that El means God. Dealing with Elohim. That's all throughout the Old Testament. God. He's Kara El. That's why it's Israel. Kara El, God of Israel. See what I'm saying? And then the El, we know for sure they blaspheme using that. Elohim meaning God. The word Elohim occurs more than 2,500 times in the Hebrew Bible, dealing with El, right? Elohim. That's why on Stranger Things the girl is El, right? And she has the powers and she's gonna save the world. And I use this as an example a lot because this show is huge and a lot of people have seen this show, and it's a very blasphemous show. And then obviously there was Elvis, and he was the king of rock. So that's the L again. You see what I'm saying? That's the L again, because Christ is referred to as the rock in 1 Corinthians 10:4, and he is the rock that is rejected. So that's that same thing of what I was showing with the Rolling Stones about how they're doing that through the past darkly, looking through the glass. They like to roll them stones. Just a super blasphemous people. Then that's why they have the magazine, Rolling Stone magazine. You know what I'm saying? So that's why he was called the King of Rock, that sort of deal. And then again, dealing with the car, that's the whole concept of the car, because we got to realize Satan runs this world. So he literally set up the car to be named after the Lord, because he wanted it to be to where now obviously we have to drive our cars. So I'm not saying that we're supposed to deny them, but it's the symbolism of it. So like he basically was saying, the car is going to help people get to where they need to be, and that's what Christ does. It's through Christ that we get to heaven. He is our transportation to heaven. So Satan set it up in this world that we get in our car. We can have our own car. We can drive ourselves. We can listen to our own music in our car. We can look through the glass in our car and go to where we need to be. But it really gets interesting and undeniable when you start to break down the car and the whole aspect of the car. So like we always have to put oil in our cars, right? And I had covered this in other videos, but I just want to cover it again real quick, just in case anybody was confused. The anointed one is what Christ means, right? Derived from the Hebrew Messiah. So, and the anointing was dealing with oil, symbolized by the application of oil. It was a ritual used to signify a person's consecration for a specific role, such as a king, priest, or prophet. Dealing with the oil. So Christ itself doesn't mean oil, but it means the anointed one, which dealt with oil, anointing people. It was always dealing with the oil. So I was just showing how KARAST means Christ. So that's why we put the oil in our cars. And then that's why they set up the names all this way. They didn't need to call this oil. They didn't need to call it oil. They didn't need to call this a car. They didn't need to call it, you know what I mean? Like they set everything up this way. So, and then the wheels, that just goes into Ezekiel. The appearance of the wheels and their work was likened to the color of a barrel, and they four had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. So, the wheels were a part of a divine vision that Ezekiel had, and it was about those creatures that were with the Lord, cherubim, angelic beings appointed as guardians of the holiness of God. So that's why our car we have oil in the car, and it has the wheels. And that's why in movies and musicians, they're always talking about the car, and they're always crashing the car, and they're always blaspheming that way, because it's just what they do, right? So let's get into this Black Mirror again. So yeah, Black Mirror. So dealing with the Black Mirror, that's why who created Black Mirror and who creates all the episodes, his name is Charlie Brooker, because that goes into the same thing that I was just showing. Charlie and Charles is the same way with Karas, because it's CHR, right? So that H, you would just pronounce it as car. That's why, like you could pronounce this as Carly. That's why there was that show iCarly. You know what I mean? So it's car. And then the char aspect goes into how the Lord, his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace. As it's written in Revelation 1:15, because char means to be burnt, to blacken its surface. So that's why Charles is a big name, because it includes the car and it includes the char, you know what I'm saying? And so that's why that's all coming together. And then dealing with the Carol name again, the Carol, that's what this episode's about that I'm going to be showing in Black Mirror is about Carol. That's why it's Christmas caroling, Christmas carols, because Christ is Carol. He's Kara El. He comes in the name of Carol. So that's why they always set it up so Christmas is next to Carol. So when you're celebrating Christ, you're mentioning carols all the time. You're doing carols. You know what I mean? And then that book, A Christmas Carol, it was written by Charles. You see what I'm saying? It's always that same thing, you know? So that's why that had to be made by Charles, making A Christmas Carol. Because they already knew, just like how Black Mirror is made by Charlie. And then that's why, you know, there was Charles Manson who was blaspheming the Son of Man, and he had his cult. And then Chucky's name is Charles, and he has his cult, the cult of Chucky. They always do that with that Charles name because they already know. And then we already know, like LeBron James. LeBron James is, you know, King James dealing with, you know, the Bible, the King James Bible. And remember, he had to start his career off as a Cavalier. And he had to start off as a Cavalier because a Cavalier is a supporter of King Charles. You see what I'm saying? You see how this all comes together? So you have King James being a Cavalier, which is a supporter of King Charles. And then you have A Christmas Carol made by Charles, right? So Christ related stuff, like King James Bible, it's always related to Carr, it's always related to Carol, it's always related to Charles. That's why Kris Jenner, she's Kristen, she has Christ in her name, and she's um, Kardashian. That's why the NBA player Max Christie, his middle name is Carl, so he's Carl and Christ. There's always, with these things that have to do with Christ, they always have to do with Carol as well, or Charles. See what I'm saying? So let's get into this Black Mirror here. So now in this episode of Black Mirror, this is the main character, right? This is the main character in it. And this, now the whole theme of this whole episode is they use this high-tech technology to basically go into photos, like physically step into an old photo, and he's trying to remember Carol's face. The whole episode, he's trying to remember Carol's face, right? And before we jump into that, the man who plays in this, his name is Paul Giamatti. Anyway, his middle name is Edward. So this is just like I've been showing. They always do this. There's always Edward next to Carol, or with Christ. There's always symbolism of Edward being there. Ed always has to be there because as it's written in Joshua 22:34, and the children of Reuben and the children of Gad called the altar Ed, for it shall be a witness between us that the Lord is God. So that's why he had to be Edward playing in this. And I actually just know, I had noticed this when I was putting the video together. He was born on June 6th of 67. So this guy who's searching for Carol in the show, he's born on 6/6, dealing with the number of the flesh in the year 67, right? And if we remember in that movie The Omen about the little boy who's the Antichrist, he plays his name is Damien, and he was born on June 6th because they already know that that 66, that's the number of the flesh, the sixes, and that seven's the number of the spirit. That's why the rapper as well that I've mentioned before, who's been gaining popularity, his middle name is Edward as well. So his middle name is Edward. His name is Babytron. His middle name is Edward, and he's born on June 6th. And he blasphemes really heavily. He calls himself like a messiah, and then his albums are called like Old Testament and New Testament. See, look, Ben Reaper, Old Testament, and then he has this one, New Testament. So he's just a big blasphemer as well. And then his first track on this album is called Genesis 1:1. So like he calls himself Messiah, and he's Edward as well. He's Edward, and he's born June 6th, just like the actor is Paul Giamatti. He's Edward, and he's born June 6th, right? And this whole episode is about this man. He's seeking Carol's face. So I'm going to get into that in a second. Just give me 1 second. Yes, that's why in this episode, the man who's played by Edward, he's searching for Carol, right? And this just goes into that same thing of how Anthony Edwards, he used to play with Carl. You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing every time. There's always a Carl, there's always a Ed, there's always a Charles or a Carol, because they blaspheme the name. As I started, dealing with his name continually every day is blasphemed. Therefore, we will know the name. So let's get into the beginning of this. So this is how the show starts off. He gets a phone call, and I'll just play it here.
Absolutely, but this regards Miss Royce's mother, Carol Royce.
I don't know a Carol Royce either.
Her maiden name was Hoffman, Carol Hoffman.
So the guy asks him, he says, we're calling on behalf of Carol Royce. The guy says, I don't know who Carol Royce is. And then the guy said, um,
Absolutely. But
he said her
Rick
last
Owens,
name is
Mr. Royce's
Hartman,
mother,
right?
Carol Royce.
Let's
I don't
I'll
know what Carol
go to it
Royce
real
either.
quick.
Her maiden name
Her maiden name was Hartman. She's Carol Hartman. And the name Hartman, the reason they had to choose that name is because Hartman means the strong man. So she's Carol, the strong man. You know what I mean? Because they already know Christ is the strong man, the Messiah is the strong man. You know, as it's written in Psalm 19:5, which as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber and rejoice as a strong man to run a race. You know, the strong man. And they always blaspheme like this. They like to make the Carols a woman because they want to blaspheme and basically call the Messiah, you know, the other call him like a woman pretty much. That's just the way they blaspheme oftentimes. Um, so that's what that goes into. And then that's why dealing with the strong man, she's Carol the strong man, because that's what Hartman means. And then that's why Obama was always talking about, you know, we need to reject the strong man. Strong man politics are dangerous, you know. He's warning against the rise of strongman politics because he's the Antichrist. You know, he's that son of perdition that was written about. There was many Antichrists, but he is the one that Daniel prophesied. That's became clear at this point. Um, so that's why he had to talk about, you know, strongman politics are coming, and we have to stop that. We have to reject that. Okay, so here we go. So yeah, here we go. Here's the scene when he first has to try to like envision Carol's face.
Now all you have to do is think of Carol. I haven't done that for a long time.
Now all you have to do is think of Carol. He says, I haven't done that for a long time.
Understood. But try to recall her now. Close your eyes and picture her face.
Picture her face. So I'm going to get into it more, but that's what this whole episode is about. The man who's played by Edward is seeking Carol's face, right? And the reason that he's focusing on seeking Carol's face is because I already said that Carol, KARAST, that's the way of saying Christ, you know, the original way of saying Christ. And we know that Christ comes in that Carol name. So he's seeking Carol's face because as it's written, seek the Lord in his strength, seek his face continually. This is in 1 Chronicles 16:11. So right there, seek his face continually. He's seeking Carol's face, right? And then we got 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and I will heal their land. So always dealing with seeking that face, you know. So he's trying to find Carol's face. And then Psalm 105:4, seek the Lord in his strength, seek his face evermore.
Typed in cloud, I can search for images of Carol.
Smartphones and clouds didn't exist back when I knew her.
So she says, you know, if you just grant access to the cloud, we can search for Carol. We can find Carol's face if you give me the access to the cloud. And then he says, you know, smartphones and clouds didn't exist when I knew her. So when he knew Carol, clouds and stuff didn't exist. Because what this deals with is, you know, as it's written, Revelation 1:7, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him. So that clouds aspect, now this is where it gets, you know, they did some damage, you know, Satan did some damage, making people think that Christ wasn't going to be a man, you know, that he was going to just open up the clouds and fly down, you know, and there's many people that still believe that. Now, that's just not the case because as it says in 1 John 4:3, that all who deny Christ in flesh, all who deny him as a human, are antichrists. That's the spirit of antichrist. And Antichrist is only written 4 times. So it tells us there, you know, those who deny him as a human, those who deny him in flesh are Antichrist. So that's just what that's about. And that word rapture isn't found in the Bible. It's just not. All right. So that time's coming to an end. And then as it's written in Revelation 12 that he's a man. She brought forth a man child. You know, when you get into the scriptures, it's clear. You know, there's certain things that have to happen on this earth. There's a kingdom that has to be built on this earth before we just float up in the sky, okay? That's just the way that goes. So that's why it's written to study to show yourself approved. You know? So as it says, he comes with clouds, you know? He comes with clouds because as it's written in Hebrews 12:1, we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, right? We are with a cloud of witnesses. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doeth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. So we have a cloud of witnesses, and it just said he comes with clouds. So he comes with witnesses. He comes with people testifying of who he is, because we got to raise him up. Remember what he said? Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. You know what I mean? So that's what that's all about. Now that had to do with him being on the cross as well, but he wasn't the son of, like, the Son of Man. That's a literal term, right? He's the Son of Man. He came from a virgin the first time, so he isn't the Son of a Man yet. He's always the Son of God, but he was specifically telling us he's going to be Son of Man. That's why he said, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall it also be as the Son of Man." He was letting us know, man. So that time has to stop where we're looking to the sky, because that's not the case. So let's see what else was next in here. Okay, so here's where he's about to go in the picture and try to remember Carol's face. So this is him right here, and then this is Carol. So this is an old picture he's looking at. So the thing says to him, "Shall we go in?"
What do you mean, go in?
It's easiest to just show you.
Jesus Christ.
Look at that. So he goes in there. The man who's played by Edward, he goes into the picture. He's trying to seek Carol's face. Look at the first thing he says when he goes in there. You know, he says Christ. He says Jesus Christ, Yeshua Christ. Right when he goes in there, when he's searching for Carol's face, right when he goes in the picture, because they already know that's what they're symbolizing with this, is seeking the Lord's face. And all throughout this episode, they're hiding her face. So I'm going to show it even more. All right, here we go. Here's where he's going to try to seek her face. This is the first time he has went in a picture.
Well, I never said we got together.
Oh, come on. Look at the way you're looking at her. I'm guessing she was looking back at you the same way.
I made her laugh. She was new in the house. I didn't know her, but I wanted to, and I made her laugh. And she looked, oh crap.
Look at that, man. Look at that. He turns around to seek Carol's face. Look what he says. Oh Christ. Oh Christ, to Carol. Come on, man. He looks at Carol and he says, "Oh Christ." Like when I was watching this, I mean, it was building up, and I was like, wow, this probably is going to have a lot of blasphemy in it, dealing with Carol, because we know Christ comes in that Carol name. But wow, man, he looks at her and says, "Oh Christ," and then Carol doesn't have a face. Because remember what I said? They're dealing with seeking Carol's face. Seek the Lord. Seek his face continually. Seek his face every day. Seek the Lord. Carol, Karel, Christ, KARAST. You see what I'm saying? All coming together, man. They're putting it in the movies for us. This was #1 on Netflix trending, and it's still it's probably in the top 3 right now, top 5. Black Mirror. Like, this stuff is crazy, and there's even more in this. Okay, now this part is in the story. This was when they were together. Him and Carol. He got mad at Carol, so he cut he cut her face out of everything. All their pictures, he cut her face out of every picture. Because that's what they want to do. They want to hide Carol's face. I mean, this is crazy, man. I was watching this and I was just like, wow. Look at that.
So after we broke up, if it had...
Yeah, look at that. Scribbled her face out. And remember, he's played by Edward. This is sick how these people work, man. Once like as it says, he who has ears, let him hear, Well, like, if you have the ears to hear, the eyes to see, this stuff is right there, man. Look at that. He's just cutting Carol's face out, just trying to hide Carol.
Her face in it, I either threw it out or I
Look at that.
did that.
You were upset with her.
That's one way of putting it, yeah. You won't ever know how hard I felt for that girl, like beyond everything. And
Look at all them pictures. Just cut her face out of everything. Hide Carol's face. Now he's trying to find it. Because they already know Messiah walks the earth, man. They already know, so they want to keep that face hidden, man. It's all coming together. That's why you have the rapper Playboy Cardi, Carr. That's why he's always trying to hide his face. You know what I'm saying? It's that same thing every time, man. That's why they're always doing that. Like, it's not up for debate no more. This is what's
She
going
said
on.
she always said she felt the same, and I believed she felt the same. And then she drops me into a pit.
Look at that. He said Carol dropped him into a pit. Carol, we're doing, and I already said that deals with Christ, right? Carol. So Carol dropped him into a pit. He was devastated. Like, man, once you know the name and you know what's going on and you know what the Carol name, how important that name is, it's over, man. That's exactly what they're symbolizing. So yeah, dealing with hiding Carol's face, you know what I'm saying? That's why this is what I was talking about, the rapper Playboy Cardi. He's always rocking this look, where he's covering his face, hiding his face. Because, he's Carr, just like she's Carol, he's Carr, they're hiding their face because you got to seek the Lord's face, seek Carol's face, seek Cara L's face, seek Christ's face, seek KARAST's face. You see what I'm saying? It's all coming together, man. Like you got to just know the blasphemy and then it's over with. Like this stuff, it's crazy, man. Now this other part here in it, this was another picture that he had of Carol. So she's next to the hot dog. So let's get into this real
It was
quick.
wet.
Well, that's a start. Let's see what else you can recall.
So right there, you have the guy who's played, his actor's name is Edward. You have Carol whose face is scribbled out, and then he's next to the hot dog. That's just pork. That's ham. So let's get into this real quick.
So where exactly are we?
The pier at Cape Cod.
Well, that's where you live.
Look at that. I just noticed that. Look at the dove right there, man. Look at that. This is crazy. So Carol's face is scribbled out, and she's next to the hot dog, which is the ham, which deals with Hamashiach, right? Dealing with ham, which means the anointed one. All coming together, man. But yeah, that's why Carol is right there. And then they got she's with the ham because that's the Hamashiach, dealing with Christ, the ham, the Hebrew word for the anointed one, Hamashiach. The Hebrew word for anointed one, Hamashiach. And then that's why they have the holy dove, because remember the dove, when Christ was baptized, how the holy dove was there. You know what I mean? So that's why Carol has her face scribbled out, dealing with hiding Carol's face, and then she's with the ham, and then look at this.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I inherited my folks' house, but they were out of town, so we took the opportunity to take a cheap little vacation. My first getaway with a girlfriend.
Who took the photo?
Uh, just a tourist, some passerby we handed the camera.
So look at that. So Carol's wearing Carol's out there on the water, and there's a dog. This is crazy how they set this shot up, man. So she's with the ham, the Hamashiach. She's wearing the eagle because Christ is described as the eagle in Revelation 4:7. The first beast was like a lion, the second beast like a calf, and the third beast had a face as a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. So that's why Carol is wearing the eagle shirt. Carol's wearing the eagle shirt, and then also in Isaiah 40:31, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, they shall mount up with wings as eagles. So that's why Carol is wearing the eagle shirt next to the ham, the Hamashiach, and she's even next to the U.S. And I'm not going to get into that, but I just thought about that. That's that same thing of the UAS, the U.S. And then there's the God, and that's just spelled backwards. That's God, or the dog, and then there's the dog, and spelled backward. That's just God. And then they're on a pier, so there's like a water out there. So that's why because as it's written, he is the living waters. Christ is the living waters, and then he's the man out to sea. So that's why this whole, and if you didn't know these things, you would think this would just come off as just another scene, but no, this is super deep, man, because Christ comes in that Carol name. You know what I mean? So it's very deep. Now, these were some screenshots I got from it. So, like right here, look at this. Again, he has to say, remember how I showed those times when he looks at her and he can't see her face and he says, "Oh, Christ," while he looks at Carol. And then when he first came into the picture, he said, "Jesus Christ," Yeshua Christ, when he first came into the picture, dealing with Carol. That's why they have Carol dressed up in a devil costume like this, because in their world, in their reality, in Satan's reality, God is the evil one, God's the one in the wrong. So that's why he had to say, Jesus, that's Carol in red right there. I was so mad I used a cigarette on this. So he burnt Carol's face out with a cigarette. That's crazy. So yeah, he says, Jesus, that's Carol. Jesus, that's Carol. It's right there, man. It's right there. They're letting you know, man. They're letting you know what the Carol name is. It's right there, Kara L. So and then he had to say she's in red right there because um when Christ, he died for our sins, in the red, the scarlet. And then that's why like that movie Carrie as well, the movie Carrie as well, she was in the red, remember? So that's Car again. That's why he has to say, Jesus, that's Carol in red there. And then he burnt her face out with a cigarette. And then, isn't that Carol with her back to us in red? So Carol, they can never find Carol's face. They can see everybody else's face, but they can never find Carol's face. And then look again, he says, "Oh Jesus, not you too." And look, while Carol's in the background, he has to say that. You know what I mean? Like it's not up for debate, man. This is real. Like they know they're putting it right there. He says, "Oh Jesus, not you too," with Carol right there. And then right here, Jesus, that's Carol. And then remember when he looked at her and he said, "Oh Christ, Carol, I can't see her face." And then dealing with Carol, dealing with Kara. I had showed this again in my other video, but I just want to show it again real quick because it has to do, with the Carol, how this whole thing he's searching for Carol, and how all these movies and how we sing Christmas carols and they're always talking about Carol, right? So here we go with this song, Roses by Outkast. So he opens the book, the blasphemy of the book of life, and he sees Caroline in there. It says biggest flirt, talking about Caroline. So then let's go to the part right here. Here we go.
Caroline, see Caroline, all the guys would say she's mighty fine.
Caroline, all the guys will say she's mighty fine. And then they got the car in there because they already know. They already know who Carol is. They already know what Carol's all about. They already know that Christ comes in that Carol name, man. They already know. It's been in front of us the whole time. Now they're just putting it in movies. So yeah.
Mighty fine, but mighty fine.
Yes, and these dudes, outcast, they were just letting us know the whole time that, outcast, they're outcast out of heaven, they were cast down, fallen, the fallen, outcast. That's why in this song, listen to what he has to say about Carol, what he has to say about Caroline.
Caroline, she's the reason for the word.
Look at that. While Caroline's in the car, he says, Caroline, she's the reason for the word. And this is like the clean version. He said witch, right? But he really says the B word, In the original lyrics, he says the B word. So that's why it has Carol driving in the car. Again, dealing with the KARAST. So they have Caroline driving in the car. And then listen to what he says. This dude is wicked, man. Listen to this.
Witch. I hope she's speeding on the way to the club, trying to hurry up and get to a baller or a singer or somebody like that, and try to put on her makeup in the mirror and crash into.
Look how evil that is, man. He said he hopes that Carol's looking in the mirror, because remember, this is what this is all about, the black mirror. So because as it's written, for now we see through a glass darkly. So he says he hopes that Carol's looking in the mirror and not paying attention, and that she crashes her car, dealing with KARAST. There's no way around it. That's exactly what he was talking about right there. Let's hear it again. And if you notice, they hit the teacher parking sign because, Christ is the teacher. We learn from him. He is the great rabbi. So that's why they crashed over the teacher. And that just goes into Pink Floyd too, hey, teacher, leave those kids alone. Hey, teacher, we don't need no education. We don't need no thought control. Hey, teacher, leave them kids alone. Pink Floyd.
Get to a baller or a singer, somebody like that, and try to put on her makeup in the mirror and crash into a ditch. Just
he hopes Carol crashes into a ditch. She's looking in the mirror. And this was a popular song too, Outkast, Like they were just that's so crazy what they're really saying now that we know who Carol is and what Carol is. Like that, it's so crazy that he was saying that, but that's how these devils work. They blaspheme all day long. So that's really what I wanted to focus on with this Carol name for this Black Mirror episode. If you guys want to check it out, I mean, you can. It's in the new season. But yeah, I was just watching it for blasphemy purposes, just to identify the stuff, because it's, blessed is he who watches, and also as it's written, lest Satan should get advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So there was something else I wanted to show real quick. Okay, now this was from the other episode I was talking about. Remember how I said I was gonna have one more little thing? So in this episode, they highlighted Kara, right? When I watched this scene.
Non-pork gelatin for the mallow.
Non-pork gelatin. Actually, do you know what? I can't remember if it's pork Mr. Deer doesn't eat, but it's go totally plant-based.
So she says, I don't know if it's not pork that he eats. She was talking about her boss, and they were like making a sweet for him. So she goes, let's use carrageenan, Kara. So watch.
Carrageenan. It's made from sort of seaweed.
Oh, seriously, again?
And then see, look, she's trying to spell it out. She goes, Kara, Carra, Kara. And then this girl over here is saying, who's drank my milk?
Almond milk?
It's carrageenan.
Not I said, the little redhead.
How do I spell that?
Is there a way you can-
Kara,
Carrageenan is C-A...
Car. So this is that same show, just another episode.
no,
Well, I knew it was you.
Obviously, I went to the cow's milk.
do you know what? I'm just going to email you with the full...
So yep, she said, I'll just email you with the full spelling. So I'll show that here in a second. Okay, so here's where she emails it to her. And watch, she spells it wrong, so they specifically highlight Kara in this episode. Watch.
I've been hooked on this, AB. It's like heroin patient
So see, she spelt it wrong, and then she's like, oh, huh? And then she has to right click on it.
for me, but now I've gone vegan. They do chicken one. Yeah, but
Kara. So they were making sure to highlight it,
that was weird white sauce in it.
right? And then watch what happened later.
And how I wrote it. I am saying that Verity is mistaken.
So she sent the email in to him, and then they turned out that they ended up using, it was changed to non-pork, right, instead of carrageenan, which she wrote. And she's like, no, I know what I wrote. I wrote carrageenan. And she's like, no, I think she changed it. So watch.
Let's see that email.
Non-pork gelatin. And remember, we just seen her write carrageenan. So look, that's so crazy, man, what they're saying. So since they didn't put Kara, they put non-pork, so non-ham. So they're basically symbolizing that the Kara is the ham. I mean, even though carrageenan is not, but you see what I mean? Like how they removed Kara and then they changed it to non-pork. And she's like, no, I didn't put that because that pork is just what I was talking about with the Hamashiach, meaning Christ, and how that's why Kara was next to the hot dog with her face blurred out on the water with the holy dove up there and the dog wearing the eagle jacket. Ain't no way.
I think you owe Verity an apology.
That's not what I wrote.
That is not what I wrote. And so she remembers she put Carrageenan. And then watch this part. That same girl who had been changing it, she changed it from Cara to non-pork gelatin. Watch, she takes Louisa's milk. Remember how earlier with the car that girl was snapping? She's like, who's been drinking my milk? That girl's name is Louisa. Lewis, watch. Look at that, Louisa. So she's the one who's been drinking Louisa's milk. She removed Cara, and then she drinks Louisa's milk. Like, that's so crazy, man. Because the Lewis, when you translate praise the Lord, that's Lewis eternal. And it goes even deeper than that as well, but that's how you get hallelujah, because halle means to praise, Lewis eternal Yah. So hallelujah, the Lu, that's the part that isn't talked about a lot, but it's very important. The Lewis, the Luaz, because the Waz was like the scepter, I'll get into that in another video, but I just wanted to show this because that was so crazy. She's the one who changes the Cara, and she doesn't even know how to spell Cara, and then she drinks Louisa's milk, and then she drops it. Watch. So look at that, all coming together, man. That's Louisa. She's been drinking Louisa's milk. And then remember when they were snapping about spelling it wrong? How the girl was like, "Who's been doing that?" Watch.
Non-pork gelatin for the mallow. Seriously, again.
Kara,
Almond milk.
who's had me almond milk? So right when she says Kara, the girl Louisa says, "Who's had my milk?"
It's carrot.
So I said a little redhead.
Look at that, man. Stuff is serious. Once you know the name and you know like why everything is set up the way it is, man. Because you know that when they're doing stuff for these movies and shows, everything is like really like down packed. You know, like they really like know what they're doing with this stuff. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's really all I got. I'm gonna have more videos coming. I just wanted to get this video recorded because I had seen that and I was just like, wow, that's so crazy, man, how they're blaspheming like that. But I'm not surprised, but that's what it's all about, man. You know the name and stuff, you can just see it, and that Carol name is very important. So yeah, that's all I got. I wish peace, love, prosperity to everyone, and God bless everyone. God bless.